Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell Podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. Pleased to be joined by the one, the only Bob Pockrass of Fox Sports, of course, the NASCAR insider. Bob, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us.
Thanks for having me, Casey.
Okay, so I know there's a lot of stuff going on in NASCAR, also in motorsports as well. Probably the biggest story going on right now is where Kyle Busch is going to end up. Where are we in those talks? And as of right now, is the indication, is he leaving or what's really happening?
I mean, look, you could walk through the garage one day and talk to people who you feel like are in the know, and you're like, man, he's most likely leaving. And then to go through the garage the next day and talk to people who you think are in the know, and it's like, oh, maybe he's going to stay. And seriously, that's the way it was in Indianapolis over the Indianapolis weekend. So, like earlier in the year, it looked like they had a sponsor. It looked like he's probably going to stay. That didn't happen. And now, Gibbs doesn't have sponsorship, so they can only offer him so much money. He certainly obviously wanted more, and they're trying to work to find a way to get to a point where everybody is happy, at least for next year. Can Kyle Busch bring sponsorship or find some sponsors? Can Gibbs find some sponsors, at least a bridge for at least another year? I think they're still working on it. And you ask for an indication, and I can't give you one. I mean, it's really 50-50 in my view right now. Maybe a little bit leaning more towards that he doesn't stay just because of how long it's taken. But literally, Gibbs is in a great spot, not great spot. Gibbs is in a spot of leverage because, they have Ty Gibbs, right? And they don't need to decide on Ty Gibbs and whether he's going cup racing till the middle of January in a lot of ways. So they have time. Kyle Busch right now doesn't have any, offers from other teams that he would say that I think you would say, well, he's definitely going to take that. So he has nowhere to say, well, hey, let's get this done now or else I'll do this. So, usually in this type of thing, you'd have like some sort of, there'd be a little bit of urgency on the sense of like, gosh, we got to make some decisions. But in a lot of ways, there isn't as much urgency in this situation. So it's a little bit strange in August to be saying, gosh, we may not know till October or November, but gosh, we might not know till October or November how this ends up.
Yeah. And speaking of, you mentioned Ty Gibbs, of course, he'll be in the 45 car this week for Kurt. What is the latest update that you've gotten with him?
Well, I think you saw Kurt he posted on social media that he was at a Charlotte FC soccer game last night. He said the doctors he needs to get in some loud situations and see how he handles those. So he's obviously doing the work to get back. He said yesterday that he'd like to be back by Richmond. And so I would think that he hopes that he's back. I think that's an honest assessment. I think there were, last week there were a lot of people like, Michigan being the track that it is, being the high speeds that it is, would that really be the best track for Kurt to come back to? And so even if he was, even if he'd been cleared, would it have been the best place? Would it be better to start a place like Richmond? Who knows? Richmond, you're talking about way more longer laps, right? A lot of more turns. So who knows what could, depending on Kurt's situation, which would be better or which would be worse. But, I think that he'll be back, before the playoffs from everything that I've gathered from what we've seen from him on social media. But again, there's obviously no timetable when it comes to concussions, and he's I think he's at the point where he'll come back when he's ready to come back.
In terms of the what silly season is going to look like this year, technically, there's still a lot of drivers that have to technically sign contracts.
I mean, yeah, like Bubba Wallace has to sign a contract. I mean, he's going to be back at 2311. Yep. Daniel Suarez, I think, still has to sign a contract. He's going to be back at Trackhouse. I think the big question is the 10. I would say right now, it sounds like Eric Almirola is leaning toward coming back, for another year. That's, again, that can change, but I think that's kind of the way where that is going at the moment. And then I think you got Noah Gragson most likely in the 42. replacing Ty Dillon, I think is kind of where I would expect that one to go. And then, and then I think I'm not sure there's that many more out there until what does the 77 have a full-time driver next year? Does the 16 have a full-time driver next year? I think all those are dependent upon sponsorships. The front row teams still, they tend to do 1-year deals. Both those drivers have, I think, shown enough that they deserve to come back. But you got Zane Smith sitting there, and I think everybody feels like he needs to be in a Cup car in the next year or two. So is there a spot for him in any of these teams? And and then finally, of course, you have Ryan Preece out there running for Stewart Haas in kind of a hybrid role. Is there more of a chance for him to get more races?
Is it common to announce you're going somewhere 2 years before?
Well, I don't think it's common that you sign a contract for 18 months away, right? I mean, I don't think that's all that common. So, I know we like to compare this to Harvick and Childress, but Harvick didn't announce until like the summer before he was leaving that he was actually leaving. It just got out a year ahead of time. And then I think actually Richard Childress mentioned it on the media tour the following January that it would be Harvick's last year. So, I think this is a situation where they knew they were going to be going after sponsors, and Richard Childress had sponsored meetings scheduled for the following week after the Tyler Reddick announcement. And what's Reddick supposed to do? Say, if he's signed a deal, he can't really say, well, there's a chance I could be back when he had already signed. So I think there were too many sponsorship talks on both the Childress side and the 23XI side for them to really, they had two choices, either announce or know that it'll be leaked and you'll just feel like because it's appropriate not to announce it that early to announce it later. Those were their two choices, and they chose to announce.
And there's no indications that Reddick will get bought out from RC.
I mean, look, I think, especially when you talk about, what's going on with Kurt, you can't ignore that. I think Kurt wants to go another year after this year. I mean, I haven't talked to him since the injury, but I believe he'd probably like to, at least finish out this deal if he can, go out on his own terms, if that's possible. But look, I think if Childress could find a driver he feels who is as good or nearly as good as Tyler Reddick, and there is a spot open for him at Gibbs or 23XI for Tyler Reddick, I think that I don't think you can rule out a change, right? I just don't think, I think everybody would, the talks would at least happen, at least right now. Now, maybe if some sponsorship deals get signed or something, that can make it a little bit more murky. But right now, I would say, is Tyler Reddick going to be in the 8 car next year? I still think that's a maybe. and not because, look, I mean, Childress is upset about it. I think, in some ways, Childress probably, it's a catch-22. Why is Childress upset about it? Because Tyler Reddick's a really good driver. So it behooves Childress to have Reddick in that car next year, unless he can find a driver of Reddick's caliber. And I think the only one who you could say is available like that right now is Kyle Busch. And I still don't see Kyle Busch and Richard Childress gang together. Never say never, but and if they do, I think they'd have to, if Kyle Busch and Richard Childress somehow were to work together, then I think you have a Rolex or a Citizens or some sort of watch commercial there in the making.
That's a good one. And obviously there's a lot of things going on, and drivers planning on for next year and stuff. In terms of the schedule, do you see any massive, obviously with the street course being announced, do you see any other changes happening with the schedule? Could there be more new tracks added?
I mean, NASCAR's hinted to one other potential change. Don't know what that is. Haven't heard much scuttlebutt over the last few weeks on anything. I do think they want to have the schedule released by Daytona or week of Daytona, and Xfinity and truck soon after. So I think they're still working on it. But I don't think that there'll be too many, or if there's any other major moves, I think there'd only be one more.
Okay. And in terms of a title sponsor for the truck series, I know it was announced Camping World's not coming back. Any news regarding that? I know that's out there that been reported. There's been some other companies involved. Craftsman's been talked about as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Craftsman has a deal. Well, it's all part of DeWalt, Black and Decker, right? So who has a deal with Gibbs? I think there's a lot of hope that maybe there could be return of Craftsman, to the series, maybe bring it back to its roots a little bit, right? And so I think that certainly wouldn't be surprised if that is who handles it. And these sponsors are much different now than they were before, because with NASCAR now outright owning the track, most of the tracks, and the sanctioning body, there's a lot of different things that they can do with a sponsorship like that. As far as things that they can do at tracks, sponsoring races, all sorts of things that then they can package a deal around that. So again, wouldn't be surprised to see Craftsman back as the title sponsor, but and that would be a thing too. I think NASCAR would like to have kind of announced and settled sometime in the next 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure on that one. Going into really just overall in terms of prospects, obviously if Noah Gragson goes to the Cup Series, that leaves a spot open at Junior Motorsports. Is there anything else? I mean, obviously a lot of the Cup stuff has to be settled first before Xfinity and trucks. But is there any indications of who could go to Junior Motorsports, or who could they?
I mean, I think again, you got a lot of people in the Toyota pipeline there at Kyle Busch Motorsports, right? Does anybody there, make that jump to, leave Toyota to go to Junior Motorsports? I think, you look at guys, such as like a Chandler Smith. Could he be one who goes over and to Junior Motorsports, or one of the other drivers there in the trucks? I mean, I think that's possible. I just and then the other question is that even if Noah Gragson goes to the 42 as expected, is there any thought that he should also do some Xfinity races too? What type of all-star car do they have there?
Yeah.
So I think, again, Junior Motorsports is all about having sponsors, right? And pairing sponsors with drivers. So, I think, I still think that still needs to be decided once some other things, some other parts of the dominoes need to fall first.
Yeah. Do you see anybody buying a charter this offseason?
I mean, you asked that, and a few years ago, you'd be asking me, wouldn't have seen Michael Jordan buying a charter right at this,
Sure.
Maybe it was getting talked about. So, there aren't, I mean, could a charter be bought? Yes. I think the hard part is that the charter agreement currently only goes through 2024, and the new TV deal, would start in 2025. It's assuming with a new charter deal as well negotiated between the teams and NASCAR. And at that point, teams would know how much their charters are worth, from 2025 and beyond. They'll probably know that sometime next year. So, those who are selling charters aren't going to undersell, because they hope that the value is going to go up with those two new deals.
Yeah.
And those who are buying, how much are they willing to potentially risk overpaying for a charter, not knowing, exactly what those TV deals are. So, could one be bought? Yes. But, I think it's the difficulty is that, in 9 months, probably 12 months, you'll probably have a much better idea what those charters are actually going to be worth. And, and so I think there's hesitancy on both buyers and sellers to to buy one at this point, knowing that that price could change in a year.
And lastly, I know that this weekend, of course, only 4 races left to go in the regular season. We're going to Michigan, of course. What are we going to expect? This is the first time that we've seen the next gen car at MIS. Of course, I was there for the tire test and looked like it did well from the portion I saw.
Yeah,
So,
well,
what are we going to expect at MIS with this?
I mean, nobody really knows. You talk to drivers and they're not sure. I mean, it's not going to be pack racing like Atlanta, but is it going to be kind of like California? I mean, you've got a different tire that's supposedly more stable. The teams have made improvements on the cars. So, are you going to see a lot of drafting, like two style drafting with slingshot moves like you've seen in the past? I think that's quite possible. But, even the drivers are still a little bit unsure of exactly what they're going to see at Michigan.
Yeah. All right. Well, Bob Pockrass, thank you so much. And we'll see you this weekend at Michigan.
All right. See you there, Casey.